with great sadness that we announced that San Francisco Giants legend and Hall of Famer Willie Mays passed away peacefully this afternoon at the age of 93. Please join us in a moment of silence as we remember Willie Mays.
It was kind of hard at first. I took my hat off and I was kind of looking at the scoreboard and just thinking about it, and I kind of looked at the umpires, and I was like, I think you need to stop the clock, because I had to take a moment to think about it and be prideful for the jersey I was wearing, the hat I was wearing, and know that Willie did the same, and then they played the Say Hey song, and it was a little memory.
Now back to the morning roast with Bonte and Shasky.
Logan Webb last night, tough night for the Giants. Yes, they lose the game, but more importantly, we lost the life of Willie Mays, who was a forever Giant. One of the best baseball players, one of the best human beings this country has ever seen. He was an American hero. He's an African-American hero. He meant a lot to this franchise, Shasky. He meant a lot, and we're going to talk all about it all day long. We have special guests coming up. The segment is sponsored by Go to State Lumber. Serving the Bay Area for 3 generations. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit GoToStateLumber.com. You want to get the coach first? Go ahead, Shasky, if you want to get in here. We get the coach in Vallejo, who's been on hold for a while here. Coach, what's up, man? Good morning. Coach. All right, Coach, call us back. He is gone as a Hall of Famer. One of the best. Man, it's it's hard, man. You know you're a legend and you're great. When you haven't played a baseball game since basically 73, people still talk about the way you played, and the way you graced the diamond, and the way you run the bases, and the way you hit a baseball out of the yard, and the way you played center field, and who you were as a human being, and his contributions to the youth.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. He was synonymous with Junior Giants. He loved the kids. That's how you know you're a legend. That's how you know you're a folk hero. We never even seen him play, Shaq.
I know.
We were born after his last game, we were basically born 19 years later.
I know. But that's how great he was. Because all of the people that we look up to, that's their favorite player.
Yep.
And I think as you get older and older and older, you start to realize that you should have an affinity and an appreciation for those that came before you. Whether it's the music of your parents' generation or your, whoever it is that you love, their generation, those people start to become your heroes, and seeing how my dad looked up to him. Yeah, again, I don't mean to make it about myself, but that's my dad's favorite player, of all time. It's not even close. And he idolized Willie Mays. And so as, I was seeing my own father, deal with his life coming into an end, I started to go down the rabbit hole and appreciate Willie for what he was, and not try to argue with him about, no, it's Barry. You know what I mean? It's like, no, you're right. you're 100% right. And I don't know what the Shasky family would be like without Willie Mays. I don't know if we'd be into sports. We might be into tech. We might be into fishing or something else. Like I think about those things, and his impact on just the fabric of how my family operates and how ingrained we are in baseball and how much it, occupies so much of our lives and all that stuff. And I think of these things, like these connective tissues, right? So when Willie was growing up, John Shea has done a lot of research on him, and he's written a book about him. And I don't know if you've ever looked into it, but he's asked him a lot of questions. And one of his questions was hey, Willie, who were the guys that you looked up to? And he was always talking about how there's a specific quote, something along the lines of, my favorite players were the ones that I would read about in the newspaper. And it was Joe DiMaggio. Mm-hmm. It was Ted Williams.
He loved Joe D. His batting stance was modeled after Joe DiMaggio.
Exactly. And I'll get to it in a second, but Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, Stan Musial, and obviously Jackie Robinson, right? I mean, that makes a ton of sense for a lot of people. But the reason why he liked Joe DiMaggio so much because he thought he was the all-around player. Mm-hmm. And not that Musial wasn't great and Ted Williams wasn't great, but the way that Joe DiMaggio played in the field defensively and at the plate, that was his guy. I mean, how ironic is that? And you would end up playing for the Giants and they moved to San Francisco, and this is San Francisco's hero.
And they didn't embrace him at first.
And you're replacing him
Yeah.
as
Seal
the hero?
Stadium. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
So I don't know. Those kind of connective tissues to me are the most fascinating. He's on deck during one of the greatest moments of all time. He's the guy who breaks up Johnny Roseborough and Juan Marichal in the famous fight that is iconic, with Marichal swinging the bat at him, and he's the one who's sitting in the dugout crying about it. He, hits the ball that Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio are going at, and DiMaggio falls, or Mantle, slips on the sprinkler. There's so many things. The Vic Wirtz play obviously comes to mind. Hitting a home run off of Warren Spahn, breaking up the 16-inning game with a home run, 4 home runs in a game. We can go to all these different accolades, but your point about the kids, like that's the number one thing. Baseball to me, and I know we're in this travel ball era and this get money era and $500 million contract era as Scott Boras is looking to squeeze the Yankees for $550 million. The essence of baseball is playing ball in the street or in the backyard with your buddies or with your dad or whatever, and him playing stickball with the kids, him picking up those kids and going to Candlestick and getting them tickets. That's the famous, him driving around in his Chevrolet. Like that's what baseball is to me.
Well, just him walking the streets of Harlem playing stickball before we go to the stadium. And then after the stadium, going to the Red Rooster where he had his own room and they would protect him and let him play pool and have, and just chill. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, but he'd have fun. And then, the gamblers and the gangsters would be like, hey, Willie, it's 9 o'clock. And he's like, well, I got to go home. It's like, you got a game to play tomorrow because you represent more than just yourself. Somebody told me that about being in sports talk radio and being on this platform. It's like, hey, Bonte, man, you don't understand. You're opening up doors for a lot of kids who look like you. And it's just, I got a lot of mentees, man, whether they're Latin, black, white. I talk to a lot of kids every single day. Guys going to Berkeley Community College, whether they're going to Oregon, whether they're going to SF State, it doesn't matter. But somebody told me early on in my career, you represent more than just yourself because of what we've had to fight through in this country. And you think about the time Willie Mays became a Major League Baseball player. It wasn't so much longer after Jackie Robinson integrated and became the first black player in Major League Baseball and what they had to go through. And they made, when I hear my Uncle Dexter and I hear Uncle Dexter talk about Willie Mays, who got me into sports. Uncle Dexter was the guy who got me into sports in my family.
Was that his hero?
Yeah, that was his hero. He loves Mays. But he just loved the fact that he made baseball acceptable for black people. Yeah. And he broke through and said, hey, we can play baseball. We can play at the highest level. Because there was a question like, we really got on Negro League stats and whether or not the competition was up to par. A lot of people say the best players were in the Negro Leagues. They were awesome. And so for them to go into the major leagues and do what they do at a higher level and continue to produce, it meant more. It made it cool to play baseball as a black kid because we had Willie Mays. We had Frank Robinson. You had Larry Doby. You had Jackie Robinson. You know what I'm saying? You had Ken Griffey later on. You had Barry Bonds later on. You had Bobby Bonilla's of the world. You had these guys who made baseball cool saying, hey, we have our own flair to it, but we can play the game. We can hit the ball for average. We can run the bases. We can hit home runs. And Willie represented that. At a time where it was tough, man. You talk about black folks not to be able to use the same bathroom as other people. Not being able to ride in the front of the bus. I mean, that's the time Willie Mays came up. That was difficult. And when you're going to these stadiums and you're hearing what you're hearing, how do you keep your focus? How do you keep your mentals level? You know what I'm saying? How do you not lose your cool? And Willie Mays never lost his cool. And he crossed over and he became one of the first African-American superstars in this country. So that's why I see so many white guys with Willie Mays jerseys. George Burgess texted us yesterday. Willie Mays he became everybody's hero. And it didn't matter what race, what color you were, because that's who Willie was. He was welcoming to any and every race and to any and every kid. This one's going to hurt, man. But he's never going to die. He's a legend, right? Babe Ruth living forever.
Absolutely.
Willie Mays is going to live forever. Jerry West's going to live forever.
Absolutely.
Wilt Chamberlain's going to live forever. And that's where Willie Mays stacks up. You can't say that about everybody, but you can say that about Willie Mays.
It's interesting that you say, people are, whatever, the Negro League stats coming over, people can lose their minds all they want. The reality is this. Jackie breaks the color barrier in 1947. Look at the MVPs for the next 10 years, okay? Jackie in 1949, all right? You got Roy Campanella in 51. You got Roy Campanella again in 53. Willie Mays in 54. Campanella. I mean, just go right down the list.
Yeah.
Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks. It is literally littered with African-American players the 10 years after he breaks the color barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And Willie Mays being able to, hit the forefront. And again, I think that, like, to understand when he breaks in 51, I'm talking about Willie Mays now, Duke Steiner playing center field for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Mickey Mantle playing center field for the New York Yankees, and Willie Mays for the New York Giants.
Yep.
Those were the big three at the time, and then, playing the glamour position.
Yeah. In that glamour position. And then you just talk about all the stars. Joe DiMaggio's walking around New York City. Yogi Berra's, meanwhile, catching games and winning MVPs and hitting multiple home runs. I mean, you had Billy Martin out there for crying out loud. The stars that you had walking around New York City and the Giants being that team. At one point, the New York Giants was bigger than the New York Yankees in that city. And so that 51 World Series is iconic when you think about a young Mantle, an older Joe DiMaggio, who's like 36 years old now, World Series.
At the end of his
career. Yogi Berra was in the prime of his career. And you had a young Willie Mays going toe-to-toe with the New York Yankees. Unbelievable.
And you had America coming out of World War II.
Yep.
And we were starting to have this, like what you imagine when I think of the 50s, and you talk to people like my grandfather who's 90 years old and lived through it. He's like, folks that had it together, you'd bought a television in the 50s, right? And you'd sit your family, if you could afford it, you'd sit your family in front of the television and everyone would eat dinner around the television. And having Yankees Giants, even at an early time in 51, that resonated. And then obviously 54 was the one that really captured everyone's mind. And for them to see him on television doing what he was doing, imagine the impression that had on all of America, not just New York. And then to move west and for him to take the biggest sport, the most popular sport, and two of the biggest brands, Dodgers and Giants, and go west, it legitimized the West sports on the West Coast and legitimized San Francisco as a major city. I mean, it really did.
Let's go to Damon in Oakland. Good morning, man. Talking Willie Mays here. What's your thoughts on Willie Mays, man?